getting... And away we go. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome one and all to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We will take a look at some clips from the news, have a little discussion, a little dialogue with those of you who are able to join us for the live portion. And of course, if you are listening somewhere else, then you can join the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. And the monikers for that are at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. And you can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. One feline in the room today. You can't see her. Actually, I'll show her. Why not? It's Granny Smith. That's little Miss Granny Smith resting on the floor behind me, keeping me company. No one else in the room so far. No other felines in the room currently, just Granny Smith. Naturally, I do read through as many of the comments as is reasonable. So I'll say hello to some of the people that have chimed in and said hello so far. I see Helter is here today, as well as Dragon. Country Living, who says things are looking nice outside in Minnesota. Puck is here. D'Lo is here. Raccoon. Sven. Brian is here. Kimberly and Fluke Man chosen to say hello thus far. We'll see if anyone else wants to drop in as we get ready to jump into the realm of the ridiculous and take a look at our ever crumbling world through the eyes of the media, as it were. And we may as well start at the top of the heap with everyone's favorite vice president, Kamala Harris. And you already know, we talked about this yesterday. She did have the interview with Fox News. It did not go very well for her at all. She dodged pretty much every question. And Ladybug has joined us. Glad you could make it today. Are you at the Ladybug picnic? Who knows where the Ladybug picnic is? Let's see who's paying attention today. Washington Examiner article. And I had commented on this yesterday. I say, do you realize that this interview was less than 25 minutes? It was less than 25 minutes long. Here's why. Harris tries to disrupt Bayer. And I guess that's... yeah, of course, that's the person who conducted the interview. His name is Bart or something, with late appearance for confrontational interview. Fox News anchor Brett Baer, yeah, so it's Brett, not Bart. I said it wrong. Brett Baer suggested Vice President Kamala Harris tried to catch him off guard ahead of her tempestuous interview with the Republican-affiliated host on Wednesday. Giving a recap of the sit-down during a Wednesday evening appearance on Fox host Sean Hannity's show, Bayer offered a behind-the-scenes look into the interview, reflecting that when the vice president walked into the interview 17 minutes late, it felt like she was icing the kicker. Quote. And quote again, we were supposed to start at 5 p.m. This was the time they gave us. Originally, we were going to do 25 or 30 minutes. They came in and said, well, maybe 20. So it's already getting whittled down. And then the vice president showed up at 5:15, and we're pushing the envelope to be able to turn it around for the top of the 6 p.m. So that's how it all started, according to Bayer. It says the atmosphere was tense at the Fox production team as the Fox production team waited for Harris to show up. Bayer said as her late arrival pushed the limits for the network to get the interview up and running for the 6 p.m. airtime. At 5:17, the vice president walked out. So it did feel a little bit like they were icing the kicker or trying to. And originally they were talking 25 minutes and they gave us 20. So it was even less than that. It was even less than that ultimately. And D'Lo reminds us he's in San Francisco. Nature Nerd says Trumpers have embraced early voting. Pretty sure Trump will win more states this time around. Well, we will see. And Chillin' Dave is here. And by the way, the Ladybug Picnic, since nobody picked up on it, Sesame Street, the original 70s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. How many ladybugs were at the Ladybug Picnic? Come on, guys. You got to keep up. So she showed up late. She dodged questions. She really didn't answer any questions. Brett, of course, gave her a hard time because he wanted her to answer questions, and she wouldn't do it. She didn't apologize or show really any genuine grief about the people who were killed by migrants. Country says she's trying to hide from media that actually asks her questions that she needs answered. Now, interestingly enough, while we're on this subject, I wasn't aware that she was so late because I figured it was earlier than or less than 25 minutes for the interview. So it sounds like it was really, when you get through the introductions and everything, whittled down to about 20 minutes. And that's hardly an interview. That's really almost pointless. It's really almost pointless. I mean, she didn't do that with anyone else. And they were really pressed for time because they had to have it ready for the 6 p.m. slot. Puck says early voting has nothing to do with election fraud prevention. No kidding. Because, I mean, you don't know what's happening with those votes while they're sitting there. You don't know what's happening with them while they're sitting there. Now, we're going to go to the rumor mill a little bit here. I'm going to tell you some things that I've been reading on the internet. Don't know if they're true or not. It remains to be seen, but I find it interesting what I've been reading about. That after that interview, when the interview was concluded, Kamala Harris yelled at Brett. These are reports coming third party from people who worked in the studio. This is not Brett talking, but, you know, cameramen, grips, people like this. She yelled at Brett, called him, what was it, a dirty MAGA nut job, yelled at the staff that they need to edit that they need to edit what they had, which, you know, obviously Fox News would not be willing to do something like that. They didn't have time anyways. It was only a few minutes left before they had to go to air with what they had. That she started to cry and her team had to remove her. And then she got on the phone. Again, this is rumor mill stuff circulating on the internet. Got on the phone with her campaign manager and essentially cussed her out and yelled at her for nearly half an hour after the interview. And, you know, again, can't prove any of that. I mention it because given what I've seen of her, it seems plausible that that could be her attitude. This is a person with a lot of strings on her, who says what she's told to say, reads teleprompters, very arrogant, surrounded by a lot of yes men who tell her everything she does is perfect. Doesn't get her way, she's going to be nasty about it. I can believe that. I can also believe she's emotionally unstable enough to literally start to cry after yelling at everybody didn't work and needed to be removed, and then further had to backlash by getting on the phone and screaming at her campaign manager. I can believe it. I can believe that. And then I'm like, this is the person they want to put up front. The party, if this is true, this is the person you want to put up front. She's going to lash out, then beg. No, lash out, make demands, beg, cry, and then lash out at somebody else because she couldn't get her way. you're going to put this person at the forefront, leading the nation, or at least giving the illusion of such. And foreign leaders aren't going to tear her to shreds. You think anyone in the Middle East is going to listen to someone like that? That's incredible. Let me catch up a couple of comments here. Raccoon says they voted this morning. Glad to have it out of the way. They have a feeling election day is going to be a long wait. Chillin says, wouldn't it be more prudent not to do these interviews, making comments everywhere looking less than acceptable, than shine the light on me, look, I'm dumb? That's basically what Walls did. Jericho says, wow, that must have been a freaking train wreck. I did not hear all of that. Again, rumor mill stuff circulating through the internet. Okay? And I'm just waiting. If it turns up in an actual article, I'll pull it up and read it. Sven says people like Harris think they are someone. Screw her. Puck says she pulled a Hillary, signs of being emotionally unstable. I've heard that Hillary can be like that. Scream and yell at people and threaten people and all sorts of things. Country says if that's true, it's signs of mental illness. But look who we're talking about. Flukeman says, wonder if anyone secretly recorded Harris broken down. Love to see or at least hear it. Yeah, that would be great if that was recorded somewhere. And that circulated. Brian says, God, I can't stand yes men and brown nosers. No kidding. No kidding. And that's the thing. And people like this are surrounded by people that tell them, oh, yeah, that's so great. You did such a wonderful job. You're so smart and clever. And they don't give a shit about you, but that's their job. Or they think they're going to gain something from it. They think they're going to gain something from it by kissing somebody's ass all day. Kimberly says it's not hard to believe she acted that way. I hope someone secretly recorded it and it leaks out anonymously, which is my point. Again, I mention it because I've been seeing it in the feeds. It sounds plausible. It sounds plausible, but no confirmation as of yet. No confirmation as of yet as to whether or not any of that is true. But I could totally see it being true. She strikes me as the type. Jack is here. He says, should be interesting how long it will take to finalize election results. We'll be waiting days. Yeah. We'll see what happens. I don't trust any of it anyways. You all already know. You all already know. I trust my wife. I trust the cats and nothing else. Nothing else. And one more time, there's Granny Smith. She looks like she's knocked out. She looks like she's knocked out. She frequently is under me, though. Oh, a lot of you don't know the Granny Smith story from recently. I might tell that here in a minute. Something happened with her just recently that was pretty funny. Here's a name you haven't seen in a while. More money laundering, I'm sure. Everybody's favorite wannabe, Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams, President of Earth on Star Trek, the modern version of Star Trek. They made her President of Earth. Isn't that fantastic? Yeah, that's the only way she'll ever be president is in a fantasy sci-fi. They've destroyed Star Trek. Paramount has killed it. Puck says it's unconstitutional to count votes after the election. But here we go, Daily Caller article. Biden-Harris administration handed billions to coalition, partnering with Stacey Abrams' org dedicated to turning out voters. Such a fraud. The Biden-Harris Environmental Protection Agency doled out billions of taxpayer dollars in August to a left-wing nonprofit consortium linked to Democratic voter mobilization efforts, including a Stacey Abrams Get Out the Vote initiative based in Georgia. The EPA announced the Power Forward communities received $2 billion under the Inflation Reduction Act's $27 billion greenhouse gas reduction fund on August 16th. The PFC is partnering with an array of Democratic Party affiliated groups in addition to the two-time Georgia governor loser, I added that, candidate Abrams' Fair Count, including the nation's largest teachers union, a major contributor to Democratic candidates, and a prominent climate activist group, according to a review of the PFC's website. The EPA's decision to award the nonprofit consortium with a massive grant award comes as Republican lawmakers scrutinize the IRA for sending taxpayer dollars to recipients with ties to left-wing activists and the Democratic Party. At the same time that the EPA is disrupting our everyday lives, it has shown its true priorities by dishing out hard-working Americans' taxpayer dollars to vast networks of former Obama-era officials who are now leading the far left's crusade against American energy independence. And that comes from Morgan Griffith from Virginia. The PFC is working with two Abrams-backed nonprofit ventures, Fair Count and the Southern Economic Advancement Project, according to a review by DCNF. Abrams founded both of these nonprofits in 2019 following her first election loss to Brian Kemp. Fair Count, a Georgia-focused voter mobilization outfit that works to increase the participation of the state's black voters, recently criticized voter ID requirements and accused Republican governor of voter purges to exclude eligible voters from casting ballots. Now, you remember, right after she lost the second time to run for governor, she had something like 24 lawsuits against the state of Georgia, and all of them were thrown out of court. All of them paid for out of her campaign fund to herself, because she runs this shit. Because her campaign manager is also the person who runs the law firm that she's partnered with, that they pay all of this money to for these frivolous lawsuits, if I've got that right, okay? I think it was like 24 lawsuits for voter fraud because of preventing, quote, people of color and indigenous people from being able to vote. And they were all thrown out because they were unable to provide even a single witness in any of those cases that said that they couldn't vote because they didn't have ID, or couldn't vote because they were black. And $2 million was dumped, or $2 billion, dollars was dumped into these bullshit programs to encourage black people to vote in the state of Georgia. And the money comes from the Environmental Protection Agency, with money that they received from the Inflation Reduction Act. Does that sound like a lot of money laundering to anyone else? Tuck says, multitasking is not my forte. Good afternoon. Well, glad you could join us, Tuck. Jack says, Star Wars and Trek have been destroyed. Yeah, and Lord of the Rings, and Marvel, and Doctor Who. And I can keep going. You all know. Tuck says, don't forget to leave a like on both channels. Please do. I sure do appreciate it. Puck says Stacey Abrams' organization is about adding cash to her bank. That's right. Nature Nerd says we can't have President Kamala if she's so unstable after facing an uncomfortable interview. Being a U.S. president is the most stressful job in the world, and Trump is built for that. All People says clearly money laundering in the form of political donations. Talking about Abrams there. And Nature Nerd says, is Stacey Abrams seriously running for governor of Georgia again? What a nightmare. I don't know if she's running again. It would be a disaster, though, because she's a complete fraud. She's a complete fraud. And we read a lot about her in the past, because she's come up a few times, because her reach goes a lot further than the state of Georgia. She's one of their golden girls. She's in the good old boys club with the Democratic Party, or Democrat Party. I don't like saying Democratic because they hardly are. She's the designated loser. She makes a fortune in campaign funds. She gets a ton of money to her bullshit nonprofits. Wastes millions and millions of dollars in frivolous lawsuits, basically paying herself and paying her campaign manager. She's quite wealthy. She is quite wealthy. If she ever did become governor, it would be a disaster. It would be an absolute freaking disaster. And Puck says Kemp did nothing to prevent future election fraud in Georgia, so have fun with Governor Abrams. Oh, God. Oh, no, no, no. I don't know if she's running again. She's already run twice and failed. And Nature Nerd says, keep in mind the Environmental Protection Agency allowed billions of GMO mosquitoes to be released in Florida. That is correct. The EPA, it's another agency that needs to be dismantled and rebuilt from the ground up if it needs to exist at all. If it needs to exist at all. But I don't trust Abrams as far as I can throw her. I think she's a fraud. And this is highly questionable, especially since it's this money that's being dumped from the Inflation Reduction Act, which I don't see how it's reducing inflation if you're just giving away more tax dollars. That's supposed to encourage black people to vote. Like, they don't know they can vote if they want to. They have to have it pounded in their head like these. We got another one. Here's another card. I got another one. And it's all fake handwritten, but it's all printed, but it looks like it's handwritten. Anyone gotten any of these postcards? And it's addressed to my wife. It says, our rights are on the ballot on November 5th. Reproductive and voting rights, affordable housing and healthcare, good jobs and public school. Avoid long lines, vote early, bring friends and a photo ID in solidarity with Team Unity Georgia. Oh man, it just makes me want to cuss. This is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. Bring friends, please. Please. Our rights are on the ballot, reproductive and voting rights. I'm so tired of them beating that drum. Who that's a citizen that's over 18 doesn't know they can go vote if they want to? Who doesn't know that? That's kind of like the tampon commercials where, or the pad commercials for women's menstrual cycles, where they're like, you mean it comes in different sizes? Who doesn't know they come in different sizes? You could walk into the aisle for the first time and see that. Seriously. Oh my God. Tuck says Abrams is an avatar of Cloward Piven. And Sven says, remember when they polluted the tributary to the Colorado River from old mines? Yeah. But this is what all that tax money is going to, is crap like this. And you're just stuffing people, people's mailboxes with garbage that's going to end up in the trash or in a burn pile. We get tons of it every day now. Every election, we get tons of it. Nature Nerd says, is Georgia really turning into a swing state? They're trying to make it look that way. I don't know if it is or not, but they're trying to make it look that way. Ooh-wee. But I'm tired of seeing her. So, some of these politicians, I'm just so sick of seeing them. I'm sick of hearing about them. Just go away. Go the hell away. Honestly. Big story today. And I don't know why. I don't know why. This is a Reuters article. More evidence released in Trump election subversion case. Because more documents have been released. It says a U.S. judge on Friday made public more evidence collected by prosecutors in the federal criminal case accusing former President Trump of attempting to overturn his defeat in 2020. The evidence includes material referenced in a sweeping court filing from special counsel Jack Smith made public earlier this month that argued Trump, the Republican presidential candidate in this year's election, is not immune from the remaining allegations in the case. Smith's court filing contained few details that had not already been made public, but provided a detailed account of Trump's efforts to hold on to power following his election loss, including descriptions of Trump's conversations with family members and aides. A compilation of the evidence was submitted as an attachment to Smith's filing, but its public release was delayed to give the former president time to raise objections. Much of the evidence, including reports of witness interviews, transcripts of grand jury testimony, and records obtained through search warrants, have been redacted. Now, this document is like 1,900 pages. It's seriously, it's like 1,889 pages or something like that. Okay? Nearly 1,900 pages. Most of it's redacted. So what the hell is the big to do about the fact that they've released these documents? You're not going to find anything. You're not going to find anything. There's nothing in there to look at. It's almost 1,900 pages of black lines, and you'll barely be able to piece anything together from it. And this is all over the news this morning. It's everywhere. Brian says the flyers are toilet paper. They're a little stiff for that, Brian. JJ says use the flyers for paper, the toilet paper, and mail it back. Oh, you're going to put me in jail. And Puck says, are you following the aftermath of the chemical plant fire in Georgia? I've talked about it a few times. But they've still got the area blocked off over there. They've moved the barriers back, but you can't get anywhere near the biomat for a couple of blocks. There's at least 2 squad cars on every corner in that area. So you can, if you were to circle it, you can't get in there, but you can drive right past it on the highway, or on the freeway rather, because it's practically right against the freeway. It's like 50 yards from the freeway. So I'm like, if I can drive past it on the freeway, then why can't I drive near it on the roads surrounding it? And they're already paying people. There's already been settlements, and people are already getting checks, as far as I understand it. Jericho says they make it sound like a birthday party invite. Please cuss. Haven't heard you cuss in years. I rarely do. Puck says election fraud can turn any state into a swing state. Helter says doesn't mean nothing at this point. If they were going to do something, they should have done something by now. This is a waste of time. If they could have prosecuted him for anything, they'd have done it. That's true. It's just like the whole business with him in New York, and they found him guilty. Oh God, he's got 34 felony counts. No, he has a felony count with 34 attachments. All right, because they add things on. You know how that works. How has he done? Has he spent a day in jail? They're not going to put him in jail. They're not going to do anything because it's bullshit. And when it goes to appeal, it'll get thrown out, most likely, because they altered the law in order to get a conviction in the first place. Nature Nerd says, why do they release redacted if you can't read it? The law says they have to release it, but the law doesn't say they have to release it in a way that you can actually read it. So they can release the forms, but you won't see anything. You won't see anything. So yeah, I can let you look at this, but it's kind of funny. It's like I'll give you an example, a personal example from my experience in court. And this is from the first time I was in court in 2003, family court with my first ex. And she had been to she had been collecting welfare. Okay. And they called the social worker to come into court. And he sat down there and he told the judge, I don't have to answer any questions. I have the file with me. You can look at the file, but you can't use it. And you can't read it out loud. And the judge was forced to comply. So what was the point of him coming at all? I don't have to testify. I don't have to tell you anything. I don't have to confirm or deny anything, and I'm not going to. I've got the file with me. The judge can look at it, but you can't say it out loud. You can't add anything to the record. What was the point? And Tommy is quoting Psalm 27:14. I'll leave it up there for a moment. But that's the point. The law says you can put it out, but also there's nothing that guarantees you'll be able to see it. It's really kind of ridiculous. And Puck says they say the people close to the fire are coughing up blood and their pets are sick. That I'm not sure. I'm not sure about it. I thought it was interesting, though, when I read the article, I think it was late last week, that the person from the Georgia Environmental Agency who went to testify because the town council wants that plant permanently shut down again, third explosion in 7 years. They don't want it reopened. And he went to testify and fell down dead in the hallway at the courthouse. Well, he was still alive when they got him to the hospital, but they sent him to Grady, so Grady probably polished him off. But it wouldn't surprise me if people are having a bad reaction that were really close to it. And Nature Nerd shows you what that looks like. Date, name, secret, yeah. Confidential. Flukeman says, think the Democrats are afraid to put Trump in jail. More than likely, the inmates would make him the king. Well, if they did put him in jail, then that would completely martyr him. You think he was martyred when he got grazed by a bullet? You ain't seen nothing yet. Put that man in jail and watch what happens. He's already got two of the most iconic photos of the current century, of the 21st century. The mugshot, and then him jumping up out of the bodyguards with the blood splashed across his face. As we move around to some more corruption, Fox News article. This should come as no surprise to anyone. Head of nonprofit that promotes school segregation received $20 million from Gates and Bezos foundations, among others. Why am I not shocked? An activist, and I will remind you, an activist's job is to pretend to care about something, pretend to be outraged, because it's their job. That's how they make their money. That's how they butter their toast. Article reads, an activist who served as an advisor to Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro believes Black students should be taught by teachers of the same race and heads a nonprofit that has received $20 million in funding from a myriad of notable donors, including Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and Nike. So let's create more segregation. I thought we were moving away from that. That's Obama's fault. He started it. Sharif El-Mekki, a former middle and high school teacher and principal, lobbies for more Black teachers through the Center for Black Educator Development Foundation. The group's website describes its vision as a world where, quote, all Black students have access to high quality Black teachers throughout their pre-K and 12 schooling, and where all teachers demonstrate high levels of expertise in anti-racist mindsets. All right. And there's Sharif right there. It looks like they gave him a jacket to put over his t-shirt because he wasn't in the proper dress code. CBED has over $19.5 million in assets thanks to donations from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which gave hundreds of thousands in 2020 and 2021. Other donors include Nike, the Bezos Family Foundation, the University of Pennsylvania School of Education, and the Philadelphia Health Department. Fox News Digital has reached out to El-Mekki, Shapiro's office, and the Gates Foundation. They didn't hear nothing back. They're not fit to. CBED was founded with the goal of training teachers across the United States in education activism, urging a commitment to liberation, education from the racism inherent in America's institutions, including our schools. A CBED information packet, quote, the Anti-Racist Guide to Teacher Retention, developed with the Pennsylvania Department of Education, defines education as a political act that can upend white supremacy and a racist history of urging education as an oppressive social force. You know what? If these public schools taught the kids instead of this kind of bullshit, we wouldn't have the morons being milled out in the public school system that we have to deal with now. Okay? We wouldn't have this problem. We wouldn't have kids that can't fill out a check, that don't know what to do at the bank, that can't count money, that can't read a paragraph in a newspaper, that cannot write their own name legibly. We wouldn't have kids that pathetic if we just taught them the basics instead of all this garbage. He wants to go to a school that has all black teachers. They got him in Africa. But you know what? They won't go. No black American wants to leave America. Puck wants to know if I saw Trump at the black barbershop in the Bronx. No, I did not see that. Raccoon says that reminds me of an episode of Good Times where little Michael failed a test because the questions were too white. If you watch that show and you pay close attention, Michael's kind of a little bastard. He really is. Kimberly says, don't forget, according to some states, math is racist. Yeah, and Puck says ebonics again. Nature Nerd says discrimination until the rich realize they can make profit off of everyone they hire. JJ say, isn't it funny how the anti-racists tend to be the biggest racists? If he's so anti-racist, then he doesn't mind an integrated classroom. If it was a completely segregated classroom and Philadelphia said, okay, here's your all-black school, he'd be mad about that. All People says most blacks in the U.S. hail from post-65 migrant families that arrived from all black nations after segregation was removed from the U.S. That's why they want to restore it. Kimberly says, my son can write in cursive. My daughter, 1 year younger, cannot. And Jericho says, I can vouch, didn't learn a thing in school. Me either. Me either. That's why I wanted to drop. That's why I ended up dropping out. I dropped out and got my GED. Jack says we should require IQ tests before someone's allowed to vote. And Country says, I think racism would disappear if the people in power would stop talking about it, but then they couldn't divide us. Exactly. Morgan Freeman said that. He says, you want to end racism? Stop talking about it. Don't give it any credibility. And All People says 9 out of 10 9 out of 10 blacks in the U.S. laugh when society mentions slavery and segregation because they come from post-1965 migrant families. But yeah, that guy's just making a fortune. He's making a fortune. And Bezos is paying him. Bezos and Bill Gates and other organizations that shouldn't be giving them anything. Why are they funding this? Why are they funding chaos? As we move around here, I thought this was interesting. NBC News. Amazon goes nuclear, and they have plans to invest more than $500 million to develop small modular reactors. So is Amazon going to put themselves on their own private electric grid so they don't have to pay for electricity? Amazon Web Services is investing over $500 million in nuclear power, announcing 3 projects from Virginia to Washington State. AWS, Amazon's subsidiary in cloud computing, has a massive and increasing need for clean energy as it expands its services into generative AI. It's also part of Amazon's path to net zero carbon emissions. AWS announced it has signed an agreement with Dominion Energy, Virginia's utility company, to explore the development of a small modular nuclear reactor, or SMR, near Dominion's existing North Anna nuclear power station. Nuclear reactors produce no carbon emissions. They do produce radioactive waste, though. An SMR is an advanced type of nuclear reactor with a smaller footprint that allows it to be closer to the grid. They also have faster build times than traditional reactors, allowing them to come online sooner. Amazon is the latest large tech company to buy into nuclear power to fuel the growing demands from data centers. Earlier this week, Google announced it will purchase power from SMR developer Conyers Power. Constellation Energy is restarting 3 Mile Island to power Microsoft data centers. That's interesting. So it's Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, if I'm reading that correctly, are all investing in the construction of their own mini nuclear power stations to power their private grids. That's interesting. Flukeman says they think Martin Luther King would be horrified with BLM attitudes. And Jack says, hear anything about Microsoft buying the 3 Mile Island reactors? And they had just mentioned that here. They mentioned that the 3 Mile Island is being reactivated. It says, I think it was Constellation Energy is restarting 3 Mile Island to power Microsoft data center. So Microsoft is tied in with that. That is correct. Oh, yeah, there you go. Jack says, never mind. Yeah, it was in the article. I'll put that up about the cast a good time. Quote, we see the need for gigawatts of power in the coming years, and there's not going to be enough wind and solar projects to be able to meet the needs. That's because wind and solar projects are failures. They do not work the way that they have purported to work. They do not function properly. They barely are a blip on the grid. And we've gone into that in great detail. Solar and wind don't cut it. They've not been perfected. But billions are being sunk into it, mostly in tax dollars, for a failure system. And they see this. They know that wind and solar don't work, so they want a nuclear reactor. A nuclear reactor will work, but that's almost like admitting that solar and wind are useless. I mean, they literally almost kind of say it here. There's not going to be enough wind and solar projects to meet the needs. Nuclear is a great opportunity. And there it is. There it is. Jack says, shocker, green energy has been a lie all this time. Yeah, it is. It's a failure. And I did a complete independent video on the subject using the America's power grid, using the government's own resources to demonstrate it. Nature Nerd says Amazon is basically powering itself like a Navy carrier. Yeah. JJ says SMRs are meant to replace old coal-fired generators with a small footprint. The idea is the grid infrastructure is already in place for easy placement. Flukeman says, hope big tech future projects go down the toilet. They become way too powerful for years. Microsoft since the 90s. And Nature Nerd says, didn't the worst nuclear accident happen at 3 Mile Island? All the employees will get sick quickly. Not exactly. It wasn't an accident. It was a trap that wouldn't close. And the redundancies in the program would have worked, but because they were panicking, they kept bypassing the systems to try to correct the problem that would have been automatically fixed anyways. So really, human interference kept the emergency going for like 2 days, and it didn't need to. If somebody finally figured it out and said, hey, stop touching everything, just leave it alone and wait and see what happens, and the redundancies kicked in and stopped the problem. Chernobyl is one of the biggest actual disasters because there was a meltdown, and then the other one in Japan. But that was because of a tsunami, not because of a failure on the part of the system. Kimberly says, ask Texas how well the wind turbines worked in a blizzard. No kidding. Puck says, y'all need nuclear power for the Bitcoin servers. And All People says, my exposure of green energy has been helpful. I hope so for the, 100 or so people that saw that video, that they got something out of it because Yeah, YouTube sure didn't circulate that video, but I used the government's own website resources to verify what I was talking about. Jack says TMI was overblown and people overreacted. Yeah, lies and information destroyed the U.S. nuclear power program. And here's Gary Edwards. Glad you could make it. And here's an update real quick. That's the new post office box because I've changed the post office box in case anybody needed it. One more from Fluke Man here. He says, I'm surprised they haven't put hamsters and exercise wheels connected to wind farms and say, see, they do work even on windy days. Yes. Also, I had mentioned Granny Smith. I had talked about Granny Smith earlier. Come here, darling. Come here, little girl. Granny Smith, everybody. This is my little friend, Granny Smith. You all know her. Granny Smith, the apple of my eye. When we had gone to do the adoption, right? Because you remember we adopted a couple of cats recently through Paws. We also brought Granny Smith there, okay, to see if she was a candidate for adoption, to see maybe if she wanted to be adopted. Now, no problem putting her in the carrier. She was very cooperative, just like this. This is how she was. Real cooperative, real simple. You see her tail's not even twitching. A real twitchy tail is a sign of agitation, and hers is very calm, okay? So we put her in the carrier. We take her down there. The other cats are being checked. The other two cats that were adopted are being checked. Everything's cool. Then they get her out. She goes totally apeshit. All right. The guy with the gloves, you know, they get those elbow length gloves, couldn't manage her. They came to get me. Hey, you brought us a feral cat. I'm like, who? This one. Granny Smith. Feral. Wild. Crazy. Can't contain her. What are you talking about? Picked her up, cradled her just like this. Granny Smith, what are you doing? Granny Smith don't want to be adopted. They were in awe. She was like, our dude was like, no, it can't be. She's so calm now because she went nuts. I guess she just doesn't want strangers handling her. It's like, okay, we'll put you back in the carrier. No problem. Gets in the carrier, nice and quiet, sits there quietly. Not a peep out of her the whole time. Okay, I get it. You don't want to be adopted. So I'm, well, careful. She flipped around there. There you go. She lost her balance. Here you go, dear. There she is. Brought her back home. Apparently, she does not want to leave. And I thought that was hilarious. Kimberly says, pretty girl. Nature Nerd says, my cousin tried to put a windmill in his yard and regulations wouldn't allow him to even have one. Really? Really? That's incredible. You know, in the solar power out here, even if you have solar hooked up to your house and you're not using the grid at all, they still charge you $30 a month in Georgia. This is what I've been told. You still have to pay the taxes, even if you're not hooked up to the grid. You still have to pay grid taxes, and that's what that is, that $30 surcharge. Puck says, I can't believe that you would take Granny Smith to the shelter. Well, no, we took her to see if she could get adopted because we have too many. Remember, even right now, we get 18. We have 18. Kimberly says, you and your wife were chosen by Granny Smith. I guess so. And JJ says, I guess that makes you Granny Smith's human. She'll accept no substitutes. And Tuck says she looks deadly. Hardly. And even if she does, sometimes she gets excited and she nips. She's never bit hard enough, or if she taps at me, claws are never out. She doesn't bite hard enough to break skin. H12 says, I have one just like her. And Brian says, is that the Sega Genesis collection for your Xbox 360? Where? I do have a Sega Genesis and a Namco for 360. I've got it for the PlayStation 2 also. And I have a Sega Genesis. I have a Sega Genesis back there. And Puck says 18, you need to get those numbers up. Oh man, no way. We had 20. That's why we needed to try to adopt a couple out. And we brought Granny Smith just to see. Because remember, some of you know the story of where she came from. Where Granny came from. But, you know, wanted to see. And Granny said no. Granny said no. While we're on the subject, by the way, of power, Daily Mail article, Britain's green power plant burned wood from protected forests. Britain's green power plant, because you know all of these green energy anything is a huge scam. Britain's green power plant burned wood that had been chopped down in environmentally important areas of Canada, according to leaked internal emails. The huge Drax site in North Yorkshire mainly used old logs, low-grade wood, and sawmill dust, according to its bosses, but leaked emails revealed it was highly likely the company has been burning wood from ecologically significant forest. The communications revealed by the Financial Times appear to contradict claims by owners Drax Group that it burns only sustainable wood, which allows it to claim huge taxpayer subsidies. Drax has received more than £7 billion sterling of public cash since the plant started burning wood pellets in 2012 under a government green scheme. It can get through up to 7 million tons a year. Wood is said to be a sustainable fuel because carbon dioxide released during burning is recaptured when new trees grow. While it is not illegal to burn old-growth forests, experts say they should be preserved. An investigation by watchdog Ofgem found no evidence Drax engaged in deliberate misreporting over where its wood came from. But Ofgem said Drax did fail to properly record data about the wood it imported between April 2021 to March 2022. In response, it made a £25 million payment to Ofgem's voluntary redress fund. In internal emails exchanged in November of 2022, Drax executives discussed how the source of its wood should be classified. The email said Drax Canada does take material from forests that are native species that have not been previously harvested. It added material from forests of native species that have not been previously harvested may come to Drax Power Station as processing residues. Now, the thing that I caught here that I find interesting was the watchdog group, Ofgem, received a £25 million payment to, I guess, turn a blind eye about how much old growth wood they were actually burning. And somehow that doesn't seem very environmentally friendly to me. I mean, you can burn the wood, but then you'll complain about people using their fireplaces. Number one. Number two, they lied about where they got the wood. And three, you're in the UK and you're importing wood from Canada to burn. Something's really wrong with that. It seems like a damn waste. And they're getting tax subsidies to do it. Nature Nerd thinks it's funny that there's wood power plants. No kidding. You can't burn the coal, but you can burn the wood. Tuck says, imagine my shock. Gary says the guy who created the Weather Channel is on record saying global warming, climate change is all fake. Puck says, look up the story about Gainesville, Florida yard waste power plant. Short version, yard waste volume is not enough. Of course not. They should just burn all trash if they're going to do that. Tuck says Canadian government owns pretty much the entire forestry industry, doesn't it? I think it does. And Nature Nerd says the future wood power plants, its trees are renewable and grow back. And JJ says, I think it's called green power because of all the greenbacks involved. There you go. And Fluke Man says Scottish government cut down 16 million trees to build wind farm. Mayor of London wants to cut down trees on pavement to build cycle lanes. Let that sink in. Yeah, but they all complain about it. They all complain about it. It's ridiculous. And then you want to run a power plant by burning wood. And Nature Nerd says, look up how many wood power plants Finland has. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Green power plant, my ass. Green power plant, my ass. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But you want to complain about deforestation. You want to give people a hard time about burning logs in their own home fireplaces. A lot of places nowadays are giving regular citizens a hard time about that sort of thing. They're giving them a hard time. But we'll burn. We're not only going to burn wood in the power plant, we're going to import it from another country overseas. It's going to come in on a ship. How much does that cost? And your tax dollars are paying for it. Your tax dollars are paying for it. That just doesn't make any sense. It's obscene. It's absolutely obscene. But you can't burn coal. No, that's bad. Mining for coal is bad. Cutting down forests, not so much. Brian says the third 360 game to the right. Which one? To the right? Yeah, that's the see, there you go. Ultimate Genesis Collection. Ultimate Genesis Collection. And then there's Streets of Rage and Golden Axe on there. Platinum hits. Platinum hits. Or so it says. I forget how many games are on here. I think it's like 40. Something like that. Puck says, how can a tree hugger justify burning trees? I hope Treebeard goes to their house. Kimberly says, can't use your fireplace, can't catch and use rainwater. Yeah, I know, because the rainwater belongs to the county, right? I've seen and heard that argument over and over again. There is not everywhere, but there's certain states that won't let you collect rainwater, let alone use it. Nature Nerd says Sweden has a trash power plant. They burn their landfill away and are now importing trash from the UK. And that's smart, because if they're importing the garbage, they're not buying it. They're being paid to take it. They're being paid to take it because, you know, most places will pay to have it carted away. Like New York and New Jersey and a lot of northern, really hardcore liberal states, they pay to transport the trash down here. There's a lot of designated landfills in Georgia that the trash is brought in by train from New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, other places. They cart it down here and then put it in landfills in Georgia. They buy the place out. So that makes sense. You pay us, we'll burn it, and then we'll earn money from the power too. Win-win. And Brian says, I bet the Genesis is your favorite console. Yeah. I've got, you know, my latest system is the Xbox 360. I don't have any modern systems other than Xbox 360. That's as far as it goes. PlayStation 2. I've got the vintage consoles, but my favorites are always the Nintendo NES or the Sega Genesis. And then Gary says alternative energy devices are suppressed by the government via the Invention Secrecy Act of 1951. And Brian made a donation to the channel. Thank you, Brian. Very much appreciated. Every little bit helps. especially with all these felines. But with that, we are at the top of the hour. And one more here. Raccoon says, that's true. Sister works for waste management. It amazes me people will pay for other states' trash. Yep. Jack says, old school Ataris. I've got an Atari 2600 also. But we are at the top of the hour. So again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Coffee Talk and Prepper University on YouTube. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. Special thanks to Brian for making a donation to the channel today. Much appreciated. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us. Hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will catch you again on